Welcome to the Deal Finder Corner. So this is your weekly property talk show brought to you by Property Filter, hosted by myself, Guillaume Black, your favorite Frenchman. I'm the CEO and co-founder at Property Filter. It's the UK's highest rated platform to find deals. And as you know, we are on a mission to empower our property investor and deal finder and deal sources members to find 1,000 deals yet again this year, thanks to the Property Filter blueprint. And the purpose really with your Deal Finder Corner is to give you more and the best of the available resources by inviting expert guests who will share with you the latest and most current strategies, tactics, and secrets about what actually works right now in terms of finding, making deals, and the reality of systemizing and running a high-performance business in property. So it is my pleasure today to introduce you my very good friend and true Property Filter friend, Carly. And sorry, I was speaking with Stuart when we organized this, but of course, Carly is the second half of the Aparthotel revolution. So so sorry about that. I sort of messed up, but actually, I'm a lot more, even more happy that Carly is here today, and you'll see her delivery is awesome. She's got an awesome background in all things service accommodation, all things, Aparthotel, and she truly holds the bar when it comes to delivering this Aparthotel revolution. So, as you know, the short-term rental market is facing the biggest shakeup as the government plans to roll out some legislation to restrict service accommodation and Airbnb. And if you want to take advantage when more people will leave this service accommodation market, then this is how you learn how the Aparthotels can give you a way and a strategic edge. So what you can expect from today's episode. So one, Carly will take us through the different ways you can identify buildings to convert into Aparthotels, create an entire SA portfolio in a single building, in a single deal, build and systemize Aparthotel businesses to maximize profits, as well as, and then we get access to Carly, we'll get access to Carly for an exclusive Q&A. So it is it's very much my pleasure to introduce you today to my dear friend, Carly. So please give a massive virtual welcome to Carly. Hello.
Hi everyone. Thanks, Guillaume. Thank you for having me. And yes, Stuart and I would normally deliver these kind of presentations together. Sometimes we do them apart. He's lacking some internet in his at home at the moment, so I'm flying solo today. So hopefully you're not too disappointed to not see Stuart, but you'll presumably see plenty of them in the future if this is an area that you're interested in learning more about, and share a very kind of special offer that we've got for you later on as well. So I'll just share my slides. So yeah, as Guillaume said, Stuart and I are the Aparthotel Revolution. So that is our where we do specialised training on Aparthotel, on the business model, and I'm going to go into that in a lot more detail. And today, I just really want to give you a bit of a flavour of this, to see, for you to have a look and see if this is something that you're interested in exploring more and see where the opportunities are. I'm going to talk a lot about the opportunities. As Guillaume said, there's a big shake-up coming, so I'll definitely touch on that too. Just to get a little bit of a sense of the people in the room, we've got the chat box there. Can you just sort of type in if you are already doing SA or if you're new to SA? And then also, or if you're doing some other strategy like HMO, buy to let, if you just sort of type SA, new to SA, HMO, buy to let, just if I can just see, just sort of get a sense of who we've got in the room. Okay, so we've got, let's see, this is where my mouse, I don't have any control over my mouse. So we've got new to, yeah, so we've got new to SA, HMO, new to SA, some doing SA, just bought a Blackpool hotel, interesting. There's some nuance around Blackpool. New to SA, 2 buy-to-lets. Okay, interested in Aparthotels. Okay, great. So we've got a nice mix of people, and a few new, and even, if you're new to SA and maybe Aparthotels feels like a step too far right now, a lot of the content that I'm going to share is going to be very relevant for your SA business too. Okay, so just what we're going to cover today. We're going to talk about how to identify buildings that you can convert to Aparthotels and actually increase the number of units in a single building without the need for planning permission. Okay. and how to get Aparthotels to stack in this market, the things that you need to consider in terms of stacking these kind of deals, and the importance of designing a great product, and how you then systemize that business to maximize your profit, but also limit the amount of time that you spend in the business. Because of course, you know, people think about SA, Aparthotels, you might think of that as sounding like a very noisy business that you have to be really involved in. But if you systemize it in the right way, you can absolutely step out and not be and work on the business, not in it. And I'll talk about a bit more of that later on. So just about us, like who we are, you know, I recognise a couple of people, but you obviously may not know who I am. So my name's Carly Houston. I'm based in Brighton and Hove, down on the south coast. Despite the accent, I've been down south a very long time, and Brighton and Hove is the area that I invest in. Okay, and I bought my first buy-to-let in 2009. In Hove. But really, I started taking my property journey very seriously around 2013, when my sister and I came together and really wanted to make a step change in our lives, and wanted to, you know, we wanted to get out of our jobs and we wanted to do something and change our lives. And actually, we went into property as a way that we were going to do that. So we took that really seriously in 2013. One small hitch: we didn't actually have any of our own money to invest in property. So every project that we've done since the beginning, we've used other people's money. So we worked with investors from day one. And we did it all. We purchased everything, so we weren't doing the rent to rents. We were buying properties in the southeast in the expensive areas. We went in at the deep end, working with investors, using other people's money. So we've raised a lot of money over the years with private investors, and that's very much a strategy that we continue using and teach other people how to do it as well. My specialism, obviously, Aparthotels, which is what I'm talking to you about today. But the business that I built with my sister prior to that was very much focused in social and supported housing within the HMO business model. So my sister and I have got an HMO portfolio with over 100 rooms in it, all providing accommodation to vulnerable and disadvantaged people in that sector. So in between all of that, have done several other projects that have involved conversions and flips and all of that along the way. I've also been a property coach and mentor since 2015. So I've worked with hundreds of investors, helping them to achieve their property goals, both on a one-to-one basis and in a group basis. And that's something that I really enjoy doing. And I'm very, very passionate about helping people on their journey. So Stuart, just a little bit about Stuart. He's not here, so just a little side to, you know, some of you may well know who Stuart is. Again, he's independently built his own HMO co-living portfolio. So we bought it. He's based down in Brighton and Hove. We live around the corner from each other. We've known each other since around 2015, 2016. And you know, he very much pioneered within that co-living high-end HMO model, which he does again down in Brighton and Hove. We've actually got, even though we've got quite different models within our HMOs, there's a lot of similarities in our approach. We always, and the financial modelling is quite similar. You know, we always look to find buildings that we can add value to through refurbishment, and we really focus on creating a great product that's providing a really brilliant service to our tenants. And so we're very aligned in that respect. And, you know, I always talk to people about, you know, building a business that's in line with your values and has a clear purpose. And that's very much both where we're at with our businesses. So we've actually bought our very first Aparthotel in 2017. So we have been doing it since then, which means we have navigated COVID. We've been through the ups and downs. Our first hotel was 1 Broad Street, and our second one is Block 74. So they're both in central Brighton. And just to demonstrate this, because we do talk about the importance of choosing great locations. This is where our 2 sites are positioned, very close to Brighton Pier, very central to Brighton. So with these 2 sites, obviously each site has multiple units within them, but because of the proximity, you know, we get the scales of economy. Adding the second hotel, you know, we did obviously a lot of work to create that first one, but you know, as those of you know that have done kind of multiple deals, maybe you've done a few buy-to-lets, maybe you've done a few HMOs. The first one is the one that takes a lot of the work, and actually scaling that up and adding to it is so much easier because you're just kind of adding on to the foundations that you've already built. So that was very much our experience. And again, as with all my other projects, these Aparthotels were funded without any of our own money. Okay, so Stuart and I, we bought these sites. Okay, so they're high value sites in an expensive location, but we didn't use any of our own money. So we worked with private investors to fund these projects. All right. And that, you know, we'll talk about a bit more about the different kind of creative finance strategies that you can use to acquire your deals and to fund these kind of projects. So first I'm going to talk a little bit about the rise of serviced accommodation, okay, because obviously the popularity of serviced accommodation, the way that that's evolved over the years has very much fed into now this kind of evolution of Aparthotels, which is kind of a bit of a change from the traditional hotel model. So, you know, as many of you know, and obviously some of you are already doing SE, you know, it's become like maybe right over the last kind of 10 years, I would say, you know, there's really been a significant rise in SE, and it's become a very popular investment model for property investors, okay? You know, there's, you know, a lot of that is maybe to do with the Airbnb coming on the scene. Obviously, it started out people just renting a room in their home, but that's evolved into people building whole businesses around that. So it really just has come along. Obviously, rent to rent, you know, rent to rent started out very popular in the HMO sector, which it still is, but that quite quickly moved over into the SA sector as well, and you've got a lot of people doing rent to SA as well as rent to HMOs. So but up until, well, you know, as Gilliam said, and I'm going to talk about it in a minute, it really is it's an unregulated market, and it's been an unregulated market for some time. You know, those of you that might remember before HMO licensing, if any of you are old enough or have been investing long enough to remember before HMO licensing, I wasn't on the scene at that point. But, you know, that was unregulated. It was people were doing HMOs. There was no fire safety. There was no regulation. There was, you know, it was like a Wild West. Okay. And that's kind of like what the SA market it has been for all of these years. It's unregulated. You know, that brings with it some opportunities, but it also brings with it some challenges where, you know, there's lots of really responsible operators out there, but there's maybe some that are not so much. And, you know, we're going to look at, you know, what has actually increased this unregulated activity. Why has it become so popular? So you've got that Airbnb, as I mentioned, starting out with that kind of lodger, you know, that was what it was. It was people kind of renting rooms in their houses, you know, to people for short stays. That rent to rent, that rise of rent to rent. So I'm just going to highlight these key points. And then, of course, there was also the effects of Section 24. So that's essentially the what the government brought in to tax people on basically money they weren't earning, because you could no longer offset your mortgage interest as a business cost against your rent if you owned the properties in your personal name. So Section 24 came in, you know, affected a lot of landlords, but so they actually moved over to serviced accommodation, because within serviced accommodation, that actually was a business where you could legitimately offset your interest against your running costs, because it's a different kind of activity. So that was also something that encouraged people to move, landlords to move over to that business model. And that meant that, you know, you had residential buy-to-let flats and houses being converted to SA to get that additional cash flow and those benefits from it. So just to give you an example, you know, Stuart and I have both, you know, based in Brighton, obviously great opportunities there. So we have both operated single lets that we've owned as Airbnb, and we've done this. And this is an example of one that Stuart did, and this is quite a few years ago. So this is a 2-bedroom flat that he had in central Brighton. And, you know, as a single buy to let, after all these costs, you know, he's making 6,000 a year, which actually that's not too bad, is it, for a single let? However, to actually move that across to, and I think he owned it in his personal name as well. So you know, thinking about Section 24, he moved it over to SA. And that would now sleep 6 people. So it's a 2-bedroom flat, but that would now sleep 6 people. And so that net, this is the annual cash flow. So this is annual cash flow. Okay, so that'd be nice if it was monthly. That went up from 6,000 to 9,500. And this was on a fully managed basis. So this was where, you know, not doing it himself, having a holiday let company, doing all the work, doing everything. So still very much like having a single let, because not doing any of that work, but getting an extra 3.5 grand a year. So a bit of a no-brainer, lots of people doing that. And then of course, people coming in and doing rent to rents on these kind of things as well. So it's still keeping it quite hands off, but getting that much additional income. So it makes sense as to why a lot of landlords have done this. Now, there have been a few things and a few changes and a few challenges over the last couple of years, not to bring Liz Truss into it, but obviously we've seen a few issues that have come in that have actually squeezed deals. So even these no-brainer deals that made sense, suddenly some of them start to become unviable because of some of the changes that have come in that have squeezed the profits here. So I'll just you know, go through what some of those things are, because it's actually now, you know, has become a lot more difficult to get some of these smaller deals to stack up. So where you might have been able to, you know, to do a single let, change it over to SA, and actually it stacked up, they're maybe not stacking in the same way. And you know, a lot of the reasons for this is you've got higher interest rates, yeah, and mortgage lender stress tests. So if you've got a buy to let that you are, you know, operating as SA, it often still has to stack almost as a single let, especially, you know, the mortgage lender, as you know, you obviously should be using a mortgage lender that allows you to do it as short lets, but often they will still stack up the deal on a single let basis. Okay, so where those interest rates go up and the stress tests are harder, then you know, they're not, the loan to values become lower. Okay. And then, of course, we've got higher running costs. As we all know, utilities have gone up. So again, where you've got a smaller deal, like just a single property, those costs can make quite a big difference to the profit. And then ultimately that means margins are reducing. So that's one of the challenges that's been facing the SA market on these kind of individual flat basis, if you like. Now, the other thing I'm going to talk about, which Gilliam touched on, is the big shake-up, okay? The SA market shake-up. So this is the biggest shake-up that the SA market's ever going to see. These are obviously some clippings that we took when it was a proposal, okay? So this was when it was a proposal, when it was going into consultation. But as some of you will know, that even just over the last couple of days, they're now pretty much saying this is coming into effect, and they're talking about it coming into effect from this summer. Okay, so I'm going to talk through what it is. So the government, and this is cross-party, so it doesn't matter if the government changes this year. You know, they're all on board with this. So I'll talk you through what they were proposing, and which is essentially everything they were proposing, and we created the slide before the last couple of days, and we had that as this is what they're proposing, and this is pretty much what they've said is going to come in. So we're going to have some kind of national mandatory register, okay, which could be similar to the licensing scheme with HMOs, potentially. There might be some criteria around it, health and safety stuff. We don't know yet. The detail hasn't come out yet, what they're going to do, but we do know that this is coming in, and it's probably coming in a few months' time. Okay, so a new planning class, okay, so they're looking at properties like needing, so new planning class of C5, so that doesn't exist at the moment. They're talking about, again, you know, people have said, what about grandfather rights, like HMOs? And they do seem to be saying that there might be some kind of grandfather rights. I was actually quite surprised about that, but I think that will still come with some caveats, because, you know, if there's some criteria around the registration and health and safety, something might already exist as an SA, but is it, you know, from a planning point of view, but actually is it going to meet any criteria around registration or health and safety? So that's still something that you need to think about. With it, some PD, so the new planning class, which might mean that planning permission needs to be sought for new SA, but there might be some kind of permitted development, so they might allow a permitted development. However, there'll also probably likely to be some kind of Article 4, which means that individual councils can restrict that ability to convert into planning. So yeah, someone's asked grandfather rights. So yeah, I was just sort of touching on that there. They are saying that existing SA might automatically be able to continue, but we don't know the details. So although yes, there might be some kind of grandfather rights, if there is also criteria around the registration and the health and safety, if that property doesn't meet those criteria, then is that going to be allowed to continue? I would doubt it, you know, so I mean, you know, it's already in Scotland, in England, they've got, sorry, not England, Wales, I think, have already got something in there. I mean, in Scotland, for example, my understanding is the property has to have its own street entrance, you know, so if you have to go into a stairwell and go through it, you might not be allowed to do it. They may or may not bring in a similar thing in England. So there's lots of nuance. The devil's going to be in the detail, but that's kind of where you are. So sorry, the question is, what are grandfather rights? So grandfather rights is where, so for example, with an HMO, I'll take an HMO as an example. So an HMO that, you know, as you know, is Article 4. So, well, you might not know. So Article 4 is a planning restriction, which means that where there's an oversupply of, well, I'll take HMOs as an example. So if you had a city where HMOs normally is permitted development, yeah, so to turn a residential property, a C3 into a C4 HMO of up to 6 people, then in most places that's permitted development. You could do that without planning permission. However, in locations where there's too many HMOs, they're allowed, individual councils are allowed to put a restriction underneath an Article 4 direction, which means they can say no, they can refuse planning. However, if a council brings in Article 4, any properties that already were an HMO automatically are allowed to continue that use, even if they're in that Article 4 area. So that's what grandfather rights are. So hopefully that makes sense. But, you know, whilst it might sound a bit doom and gloom, we see this legislation as a massive opportunity, okay? And it's one of the biggest opportunities in service accommodation now is the legislation. And I'm going to tell you why and why we think it is, especially us. We're very happy about this legislation, okay? So if you think about it, just the reality is there are some people, this legislation is going to come in, there's going to be people who either can't continue because their properties don't meet the criteria, or they just simply don't want to go through all the hassle. I mean, there's definitely some considerations around people doing rent to rent. We don't know how it might affect mortgages and things like that. So there might be some landlords and owners of C3 residential that are just like, actually, do you know what? I don't want my property to change planning class. I don't want to go through the registration. I don't want to have to put all of these fire doors and health as whatever the requirements are. So there are just going to be some landlords and operators that just want to leave the market. Okay, so we are going to see a drop in that. So what does everyone think is going to happen when that stock leaves the market? So when we've got all of that stock that's available on Airbnb to book, and operators, so some operators are just going to leave the market and that stock's going to drop. What do we think is going to happen? Just a couple of comments would be great. What do you think might happen? Increased demand, less competition. Yeah, lower supply, price changes. Absolutely, you know, we're going to see some kind of bounce for the people who are remaining within the sector. Okay, so you know, we think about, you know, the opportunity, we're going to benefit from this bounce. So, you know, we're likely to see higher demand, higher occupancy, and then ultimately higher rates, because we're going to have a supply and demand change. So for the people that are staying in and the people that are more professional, better quality, absolutely. So the people that are staying in are going to have an opportunity from this, because, you know, it's just going to get rid of some of the, you know, the maybe the lower quality stock, and the people that just don't want to deal with it. So who's going to benefit? Who do we think is going to benefit? Okay, well, Aparthotels, okay, which is obviously what we're talking about here. Your traditional hotels, guest houses, B&Bs, you know, and the SA operators that are, you know, that are in the correct planning class, or are able to switch that planning class, and are obviously able to meet whatever the criteria is going to be around the compliance side and the health and safety and all of that. So those are the people that are going to benefit. So let's look at how you can benefit in the context of the model that we're talking about. So what if I told you that you could invest in buildings that are not then affected by this upcoming legislation? And what if I also told you that you could create multiple SA units, all cash flowing in a single building, without the need for planning permission, okay? Without the need to get planning permission, we could actually create more units in a building. Well, these buildings are all around you, okay? These buildings already exist, and I'm just going to take you through the kind of definitions of these. So you've probably seen these kind of, you know, most towns and cities have got these, you know, these kind of buildings. They actually look, some of them look quite like residential houses, but they operate as guest houses and have been for many, many years. Yeah, so you've got guest houses, you know, the owners might live there, they do everything themselves, they clean the rooms, they cook you breakfast. You know, and it's like a lot of them are kind of outdated and quite old fashioned. So you've kind of got the guest houses, bed and breakfasts. Now, when you're looking at it, you go, well, what's the difference between bed and breakfast and a guest house? Well, probably not much difference, okay? But the reason why I'm telling you the different terminology, and this actually feeds very well into property filter, is that that sometimes they advertise themselves as guest house, sometimes they advertise themselves as bed and breakfast. So when you start looking for these kind of buildings and you're using like property filter to do that, you are using all of these terms, okay? And Gilliam's actually added in a lot of these tags, which we'll probably touch on later. He's added in these different tags. Like, we've actually been working with Gilliam to kind of talk about this and how you add in these tags so you can search these on property filter using the different terminologies, which is why I'm separating them out, okay? So we've got guest houses, bed and breakfasts, the same kind of operation, just a different terminology. And small hotels, okay, which again might be a little bit different to, you know, you're not necessarily going to have the owner living there. It might have a restaurant in there, might be a bit more going on, more staff in there, a reception, but still a kind of small hotel. And then we've got hostels and backpackers. Again, some of these might fall under a kind of different use. There might be sort of youth hostels, might be a little bit different, but these kind of hostels and backpackers. Our second Aparthotel that we converted was a backpackers. Yeah, it was used as a backpackers before, and not a very nice one. So just to hold on to those terminologies. There's not that much difference in the actual buildings, but the terminologies are really important because you want to be looking for all of these, and that's where Property Filter can really help you. So what we're essentially introducing you to is the C1 use class. Okay, so C1 is hotels. Okay, so hospitality accommodation hotels, not pubs. And I know someone's just asked a question on that, which we can touch on later. So it's C1 is your hotels, B&Bs, yeah, guest houses. Some hostels might fall under a different planning class, but essentially, you know, we're looking at the C1 use class, right from your, you know, a small bed and breakfast, that's C1, right up to Hilton, your Hilton hotels, yeah, they're C1. So it's a, you know, it covers that whole range, is falls within the C1 use class. So that's what we're looking at, and that's where we're introducing you to. And what's great about the C1 use class, it's already regulated and supported by the council, which is really important. When we're converting these buildings with our particular model, the model that we do, and which I'm going to share a bit more with you, the way that we convert these buildings, we do not require a planning change of use. Okay, we're not changing the use, we're keeping it C1. We're just converting the building into a different arrangement, which I'll take you through. Okay, so no planning change of use is required when we convert these buildings. Obviously, every caveat, you always have to look at, when you're looking at a building, you of course have to look at if there's any restrictions on title, if they've had any previous planning approval which is restricted stuff. So there's always due diligence that you do in every property, but where it's straightforward like this, that's generally the case. Okay, so that means you can increase the number of rentable units without planning permission. And here's the opportunity. So some more opportunities to highlight within this use class, and why we're focusing on this. You know, someone's mentioned commercial conversions. Absolutely. Commercial buildings, converting a commercial building to an apart hotel, great strategy, brilliant. And we've got students that have done that. And that's brilliant, but of course it needs planning permission. So we're talking about the low-hanging fruit here. This is what we want to look at and focus on. So let's look at the opportunity. So many of these guest houses are outdated, okay, and the owners don't have the funds to invest in them, to bring them up to standard, the standard that people demand today. Okay, the expectations of travellers is changed a lot. Okay, so a lot of these are just outdated and just don't fit with the way that people travel now. And it's not a fast moving market. You know, the vendors often struggle to sell quickly with these kind of properties because, you know, not people aren't looking at them. People aren't necessarily thinking about the strategy that we're talking about here in terms of how they would invest in it. Okay, so it's not a fast moving market. And one of the reasons for that is owners will often show deliberate low profits to maybe stay under the VAT threshold, you know, to pay less tax. That can actually affect how the property might be valued as well, which can, you know, so then the price that they want for it might differ to what the valuer says. So again, that can cause trouble for them selling. But what that does mean is there's opportunity to negotiate on terms. Okay, so it's really important, opportunity to negotiate on terms, and less competition for deals because there aren't many people looking at these kind of buildings right now. Okay, so let's just talk about before I kind of launch in and show you a bit more about our model. It's like, what are apart hotels? Apart hotels they're essentially a hybrid, okay, between an apartment and a hotel, as the name would suggest, to give you that apart hotel. So if you think about service accommodation, how that operates, how they run, and then you think about a traditional hotel, and we're kind of combining those things to give us the apart hotel. And it's a very, very broad definition, and it can be interpreted in a number of different ways for a number of different types of property. I mean, really almost like a residential block or that you operate as SA could be considered like a mini apart hotel. You might have a block of residential flats maybe you've got 5 flats in there and you're doing it as service accommodation, yeah, and you're using the booking system and you're essentially almost running it like a little mini apart hotel. So that could be referred to as an apart hotel, maybe slightly bigger one, different mix of units in there, right up to your big complexes where you've got multiple apartments and service rooms within a single building, and it could have a restaurant in there, could have reception, could have gym, and then you could even get, you know, the ones that you get abroad that have got swimming pools and everything in there, but they're all kind of apartments. So you could, you know, you could use the definition of apart hotel, you know, across a broad scale and a broad range. It's a terminology that's been around for a long time, but it's only now very recently becoming more used and more heard of for both consumers and operators, okay? And so there can be a little bit of confusion about it. But in our view, what it essentially means is like you've got units that have self-contained facilities. They're more self-contained, so more facilities than you would get in a standard hotel room, okay? So right from sort of little mini kitchenettes up to full apartments with separate kitchens and things, which I'll show you later on, okay? But essentially each unit has self-contained facilities. This is just a couple of examples that we pulled off the internet. And they're providing hotel services and booking systems. So you're using a booking system, and then you're providing things like housekeeping, and again, different range of hotel services that might be provided depending on what the setup is. Okay, so how do we create our apart hotels, and you know, what do we look for? Like what's the process that we go through? Okay, I'm just going to rattle through this relatively quickly and like so that I can get you all the content and still have time for questions at the end. So we focus on acquiring C1 buildings, okay? As I've said before, so that's our main focus. We will absolutely look at other types of buildings. We'll look at commercial buildings that we might be able to convert, but our primary focus is looking for these C1 buildings. So we identify them and then we look to convert these into self-service apart hotels. So we're not doing the restaurants and the gyms and the receptions. We want this self-service. We want to streamline, okay? We want to keep this as lean as possible, and we want it to take up as little of our time as possible. So our particular model is for these to be self-service apart hotels. So we don't have staff on site, okay? And then what we also look to do when we're acquiring these is utilise creative finance, okay? As I said, we always work with investors on our projects, and there's a number of different ways in which you can utilise creative finance. So working with private investors, vendor finance, again, I don't have time to go into this in detail, but that's where the actual owner of the property essentially becomes your mortgage lender or your investor, okay? There's lots of clever ways that you can utilise vendor finance. Purchase lease options is a really great tool to use to acquire these kind of properties. So you get it, you lease it first and you purchase it down the road, but you agree all of that in advance. So there's definitely opportunities. Do you remember I said about the negotiation with the owners? It's not a fast moving market. These are the kind of things that you can negotiate with these types of owners, maybe more so than you could with HMO landlords or residential owners, okay? And then, of course, you've got your institutional funding, your commercial lenders, and you can often work creatively with those, okay? So we always look to utilise some kind of creative finance within every project that we do. And then we always, like one of our golden rules is always to increase the number of units and the value of the building. So that's what we look to do with ours. So let's give you an example of our first apart hotel. So we took a traditional 8-bedroom bed and breakfast. So a traditional 8-bedroom bed and breakfast. You see from the pictures there, it wasn't awful, it wasn't terrible. They were running it well, they had good reviews, it was fine. Not that exciting, but anyway, the owners were living there doing everything. Okay, so what we did, that was an 8-unit there. The owners were living there. They were doing breakfast. They were, doing all their own laundry. They had a kitchen, all of that. So we went from 8 units and we created an additional 4 units in that building. So we created an additional 4 units in the building without planning permission. Okay, we didn't need to do any extension. We used the existing internal gross internal area, so the existing GIA, and created an additional 4 units. Okay, so we went from 8 to 12. And then what we created was essentially a 12 studio apart hotel. So we took the existing units, we obviously renovated it to a different standard, produce a different product, and then we added in additional facilities to make those more contained, so they became more like studios. Okay, so that's what we did. And then what that means from the value that we added. So we doubled the value of that. So what it was valued at, you know, it was an existing business, it was an existing B&B, so that had a value when we bought it. So it was valued by the bank. We used bank finance to buy it as well as investor finance. So we combined the two. And it was valued when we bought it at 725,000. Okay, that's what it was valued at, well, which I'll actually I've got that on the next slide. But we doubled the value. So we doubled the value after we'd done our work on it, and then we actually tripled the profit. So then let's show you the numbers on that. So when we bought it, it was valued at 725,000. We actually negotiated some terms with the owner, and we paid them a bit more. We actually paid them 775. We were happy to do that because we knew what we were going to do to it. So all in, with our refurb costs and our finance costs, our total spend was about £1 million. Yeah, so the purchase price and the refurb cost and our finance costs and all our buying costs, all in, we were in for about £1 million. Yeah, does that make sense? Once we had got it operational, so once we did our work, we started trading, we got it operational, we got it to a certain point, we then got it revalued, and it got revalued at £1.5 million. Okay, so that means it was more than double what it had been valued at when we bought it. And because our total spend was about £1 million, that means we actually generated an additional 500,000 of equity. Yeah, that's like almost like a developer's margin. Does that make sense? So that's what we did on the value. The previous owner's operational profit, what they were showing anyway, was 50,000 operational profit. Some people call that EBITDA. I won't go into that in detail. Our operational profit increased to 160,000. The owners were doing everything themselves, cooking, cleaning, everything, doing all of the work themselves. We don't do any of the work ourselves, okay? And that's the profit after our costs. So after we've paid for the cleaning, after all of our management, after all of our running costs, okay, the only cost that comes off of that, because I'm sharing that operational profit because that's kind of helps to determine value, we have our finance interest comes off of that, okay? So the profit's more like 100,000, but the operational profit, 160,000, okay? So that's what we did through the work that we did to it. Oh, sorry, I just need to jump back. Oh, it's not jumping back. So the slide before said, oh, here we go. Okay, so we're going to talk to you about creating a great product and the importance of creating a great product. And the product is about how it looks, but it's also about how it operates. So it's really about, you know, understanding your market and creating a product that fits that market. We talk a lot about market research in our training. So we create, you know, the things that you can do within one of these buildings is a really good thing is to create a range of studios and apartments. So have a different range of unit type, if you like, to accommodate different demographics of the market. So you're mixing within the building. So we've got studios, studio suites, so studios which are kind of studio rooms. Well, probably most of them will sleep 2 people. There might be a 3rd bed in there sometimes. And then studio suites which are larger and might sleep groups of people, families, groups of people, maybe like 4 or 6 people. And then you've got full apartments. You could dedicate a whole floor of an apart hotel to a full apartment. If that's what your market dictates, you've got to do your market research to work out what makes the most sense and how you configure the building. So I'll just go into each of these in a bit of detail. So the studios, really, we've got a range of different types of studios. So here's just a few images across both of our sites where you can see we've got sort of slightly different design features. You want some seating in there. But some of these can be configured as a king bed, or they can be separated into twins so that you can have friends sharing together. And the studio suites, where you can sleep more. So we've got so one of our studio suites, more like an apartment really, on the basement floor of one of our Aparthotels, and we can sleep 6 people in there. Some of them sleep 4, some of them have outdoor spaces. So that's your studio suites. And then full apartments where you would accommodate like families or bigger groups, and that's much more like your kind of serviced apartment type project. And again, if that's the right thing for the market, then you could dedicate a whole floor to that. Okay, and then here's just an example of apartments. This is one of our apartments. And the design that it looks like, and you can see the different elements there. You've got twin room permanently set up, and a double room, and then there's also sofa bed in the lounge area, and then a full kitchen. So I'll talk a bit about the levels of facilities within this, because you can range this, and this can be in the different units depending, because we want to maximize the space in the building. So different size units will be able to have different levels of facilities in them, depending on how much space you've got, and again also depending on your market research and who you want to attract will help you determine. Sometimes you're better having 2 small units, because you might actually make more money that way, or if you're in a location which has more demand for larger units, you might do that. And we very much go into a lot of detail in that in our training. So at the very basic level, we might have smaller rooms that have like a snack station in them. We still want to have a fridge in there, microwave, coffee machine, kettle. So you're still putting a lot in there, but they take up less space, and then that might be a snack station. Okay. Then you have larger kitchenettes, and you can have different size kitchenettes, different units. They've got a bit more to them. You might have some hobs in there, you might not, but you've got more storage, you've got more facilities within those kitchenettes. And then of course right up to full kitchens, kitted out, where you've got all singing and all dancing. So there really is a broad range, and all of that can actually, you can have units within the same building that cross that range. Okay, and you will sell those at different prices, which means that you're able to be very competitive and adapt to the different demographics of the market. You may or may not, depending on location again, you may or may not have some kind of communal space, so some sort of communal facility that people can use. So they might have their separate rooms, and you might provide some kind of communal facility. That could be something like a communal laundry room, or it could be a communal kitchen or a communal social space. Again, you have to think about how that's going to be managed, but that is something that you could do if it makes sense. And those are all the kind of things that we look at when we're appraising and assessing the deals that our students bring for us to look at. So then the next part is really the systemization of the business and the importance of systemizing it, because most of you that are you're property investors, you're interested in investing in property. Probably, a lot of you, if you're working, it might be to actually get out of your day job. So the last thing you want to do is create yourself another day job. So we really want to systemize the business to give us the freedom to work on the business and not in it. Okay, Stuart and I do not get involved in the day-to-day of running these Aparthotels. We don't speak to guests. We're not taking bookings. We're not overseeing the housekeepers. We're not doing anything on the day-to-day. We've systemized it. We just operate at a strategic level, doing the bits that we're good at and that we enjoy at a much higher level. We're not doing the day-to-day. We've got a team, we've got the systems in place to do that. Okay, so here are some of those systems. Software and technology is key. Having the right software and the right technology to help you systemize this business is key. So we have implemented all of that. You have to have a great team, okay? So you people are involved, and you can't do it all with technology. You do have to have people involved, but they can be involved remotely. You have on the ground team, and you can have remote team. But of course, having a great team is one thing, but you need to have the processes in place for that great team to follow, because okay, putting a team in place might mean that you don't directly speak to guests, but if you don't have the right processes, then you've got your team just calling you up going, oh, I don't know what to do with this, or I don't know what to do with that. And I don't know if any of you at an SA have had that experience of either doing too much of it yourself, or when you do finally get someone involved, then you're just fielding calls from them all the time and having to direct them. So having the processes for your team to follow is absolutely essential part of the systemization of your business. And then of course we want to create as much automation as possible. So all of these things allow us to automate as much of the process as possible, but we still want to provide a great customer experience and customer journey. So all of that together is where we want to be. So the benefits of having a systemized apart hotel: you have a leaner business model, okay? So if you can systemize it, less, you've got all of that, that means your running costs are going to be lower, okay? Because you've systemized it. We don't have all the inefficient parts going on. We've made the business model leaner, okay? Of course, if you've got a leaner business model, that's going to increase your profit margins. You've got to set this up in the right way. And then leaner business model, increased profit margins, means a higher value asset. This is a business. These kind of buildings are valued as a business, okay? I mean, there's complexity around how the buildings are valued, but all of that's taken into account. And the more profitable you can make that business, the more that's going to increase the value of the asset. And then, of course, having the systemization in place, which takes you out of the running of the business, means you've got that ability to scale. One, because you've got the systems in place that you can just build on top of, and two, you've freed up your time to focus on those high value tasks like finding new projects to do. So it gives you that ability to scale. Okay, so let's just talk about the key takeaways from this session, and then I'm going to just give you a very special offer that hopefully you will be very pleased with. Okay, so the key takeaways: C1 buildings, okay, are all around you. You've got Property Filter to help you find them. The legislation that's coming in is an opportunity, okay? Apart hotels are not affected by the upcoming legislation. Really important. The bounce, okay, the apart hotels are going to benefit from the bounce, because we're going to benefit from SA operators leaving the market. Okay, we're looking forward to this legislation. We're going to benefit from this. And there's opportunities, there's always opportunities for using creative finance, which means, less upfront cash for you. And we always look at how we can utilize creative finance to get these deals to stack, and to mean that we've got less upfront cash that we need to put in. We've discussed the importance of having a design-led product. We want to give a wow factor. We want to attract guests in. We want people to click and look and then book. So creating a great product will maximize your occupancy and rates. High profit. This is a high profit strategy. Maybe we're talking about, as Gilliam said, we're talking about almost having an SA portfolio in a single building, because we've got multiple SA units in a single building, all cash flowing. So we get the scales of economy. Okay, so we can mitigate some of those things like the higher interest rates and the higher running costs, because we've got more scales of economy. So how can you get your first apart hotel? Well, the apart hotel revolution is, I think, the UK's only specialist training in this particular model. Okay, so Stuart and I provide training and mentoring programs to teach people how to find, convert, systemize and operate this kind of business. All right. So we've got two key products in terms of how we help people. We have a 1-day discovery day, which is perfect for people that are interested in the model and they want to find out more. So they can just come on our discovery day, learn, they'll actually get some really valuable content, which they can go away in action. You can actually get started with what you'll learn on the discovery day. So that's a 1-day discovery day. And then we've got our flagship program, which is a 6-month mentoring program. These are both online, so people can Zoom based, which means that geographically you can be anywhere in the country. And then our 6-month mastermind, we have monthly full day workshops, we have one-to-ones, we have deal clinics. We share everything with people in our 6 months. Okay, we share our business plans, templates, spreadsheets, operations manuals. We share absolutely everything. It's like a business in a box. So that's our two products. So I'm going to talk to you today about the discovery day. Okay, so let me just talk to you about the discovery day, because if you were interested, look, it might not be for you. This strategy might not be for you, but if it's something you're interested in, this would be the place to start. Okay, so I'll just talk you through what we do on the discovery day. So session 1 is all about the business model and finding the sites. So we give you a deeper explanation of our business model. We introduce you to the concept and how you convert these C1 guest houses, B&Bs and hotels, all the terminologies. We will talk about commercial and residential blocks, because we think it's important that you understand that it absolutely is opportunity there too. And then we'll give you our blueprint. So we'll talk to you about like all of the different elements that are involved in creating this business, and we'll go through that blueprint. Okay, and we're going to give you the information on that blueprint, and also talk to you about identifying and how you find those suitable buildings, the ones that are gonna work. So that's session 1. Session 2, it's all about market research. Okay, so and this is the foundation. Okay, it's really important. You've got to know your market. You really have to understand your market. So you identify your target location. So we go through all of the detail and how you find your target location, how to do customer and competitor research, because you need to know the demographic, because that's what's going to help you to determine how you set your apart hotel up, because you need to know who you're serving, who you want to serve. And you will look at customer research and competitor research, who your competitors are going to be, how you identify that and how you outperform them. We'll talk about how you research your rates, so your room prices and occupancy, so that you understand what you should be able to achieve. We'll give an overview and we'll go into details about how do you actually stack the deal. So what are all the different components and all the different things that you need to think about and include in your deal stacking, okay? Because you really need to know your numbers. And then we'll talk about the different funding options, okay? We're going to go into, I only touched on creative finance. I mean, like I've got literally an hour with you today. Here in the discovery day, we've got a full day, Stuart and I for a full day. Okay, we're with you on Zoom for a full day. So we go into a lot more detail. So funding options, we'll talk a lot more about bank funding, institutional funding, investor funding, all those creative finance strategies. You know, we just touched on it today. We'll go into that in more detail. We have a whole session on space design. So Stuart will take you through this. This is his area. He loves all of this. He'll take you through a space design masterclass, okay? Because we're talking about aesthetic, but also functional. So Stuart will take you through a really great session all about space design in the 3rd session. And then in the 4th session, what we do, because this is an interactive day, it's like this, everyone has their cameras on, lots of opportunity to ask questions. But what we do in our 6-month masterminds, we do deal clinics. Okay, so we do deal clinics at the end of every workshop, but we also do a deal clinic in the middle of the month. People send in the deal. So with the deal clinic demo, so we do this at the end of the discovery day. So like a couple of days before the discovery day, we send an email out and go, does anyone have a deal that they want us to look at? And you send that in before the day. So we'll take out all the sensitive information, you know, so that people can't see the name, but you can just send the floor plans in, and we actually give you feedback live in the room. So you can actually bring that, and that gives you a good introduction to how our mastermind deal clinics work. Okay, so this is a one-day event live on Zoom, okay, to learn all about the Aparthotel business model. It's myself and Stuart, it's us that deliver it. We deliver all the content in the discovery day and in the mastermind. So the business model introduction, finding suitable properties, how to get started. So there's actionable content in there that you can go away and implement straight away. Space design and optimization, the interactive deal clinic, and a Q&A session at the end as well. So we will answer your questions, we will talk to you, you'll have your cameras on. So what we're doing, we're not selling you anything today. I'm not asking you to go in and buy anything today. That we're not asking you to part with any cash. What we've arranged and what we've agreed with Gilliam, because you're here today and you're part of the Property Filter community, what we're going to do is we're going to give you an opportunity to win one of these prizes, all right, to get you on the discovery day. Now, we've got limited of both. So there's two things. So if you enter, and I'll give you the link to be able to enter in a minute. So if you enter, these are the dates for the discoveries. The first one is this Sunday, okay, then 17th of March, 28th of April. I will just put the link in there. The price is normally 247 plus VAT, so that's what we charge. That's what's available on our website. But if you enter the competition today, we have got a number of golden tickets which will get you entry absolutely free. And we've also got a number of vouchers which will give you £150 off that price. All right, so if you enter today, they are limited. We don't have, it's not an endless supply, and it's random, okay, as well. But obviously, once they're gone, they're gone. So we've got a small number of free golden tickets. And then we've also got a number of vouchers that will give you £150 off. So as long as you enter quickly, but like I say, when they're gone, they're gone. So you will win one of these things. So you might be lucky and win the golden ticket, which will get you in absolutely free as a VIP entry, or you will get a voucher for £150 off. So when you click on that link, what you will see is this page, okay? So you click on that link and it's going to open up this page, and then you just click on that register button there, and you enter the competition, and you will find out straight away whether you've won the golden ticket or whether you have won the voucher. Okay, so I hope that's been helpful. I know we are over time, and that was a lot of content to fit in an hour. I know that, like you say, everyone values their time. I'm very happy to stay on and answer questions if you have time to do that, but I also appreciate I don't want to take up your time, but I'm very happy to stay on for another 10 minutes or so and answer any questions.
Awesome, yeah. Thanks so much, Carly. Thanks so much for a very valuable session today. Really lots of stuff. I learned lots of really cool stuff as well, so thanks a lot for that. And so I'm gonna jump into the chat and pass some questions to you. And also thank you so much for, I know you guys are to sell these tickets, and thanks for giving us a bit of something special for our Property Filter members. I like to get them more value than they pay in the subscription, and that's a very good example. So a day with you guys, is invaluable, but because you put a price tag on it, it pays for their subscription for a few months, so that's quite awesome. So Norman is asking, can you open a service accommodation in a property that has got a commercial use?
So if it's a commercial building, like an office or something like that?
I think so. I think that there is no context, but I think it would be if you have an office or some form of office or something like that.
Yeah,
or
so that would that would require planning permission. So if you wanted to convert that into an apart hotel, there's some buildings that are really well suited. And actually, you know, you might have some central kind of town city locations where there's an office block that's maybe not viable as an office anymore. And actually, it might be very difficult to get planning permission to turn that into C3 residential. I mean, turning it into C3 residential might be the most profitable thing in terms of the value of the asset if you're going to sell those off. But some of those they don't give C3. So, but they might be, if it's an area that needs tourist accommodation, they might well be more open to giving you planning permission to create an apart hotel than creating C3. So and then actually the thing that I didn't maybe didn't mention in that's really interesting is when we're converting these buildings, okay, and we're making these into like self-contained units, we're not having to meet residential space standards, okay? We're not having to make these units 39, 40 square meters, okay? They don't have to meet residential space standards. So when we convert, when we're adding those extra units, they can be whatever size we want them to be. Of course, they have to meet building regs and everything. So actually, so that's another bonus about the converting the C1. We're just working within the internal area. We're not restricted by residential space standards. So, you know, that meaning that if we've got, you remember I said you could put a full apartment on one floor, but actually maybe the market's telling you that you'd have more demand if it was 3 smaller units. Well, then you could do that. Okay, when you're converting something like an office block. Again, if you're converting it into C1 use, apart hotel use, and sometimes they use different. Sometimes they might use a sui generis planning class. It doesn't matter. But like if you're doing it from a commercial building, but if you're creating holiday or serviced apartments as an apart hotel, again, you're probably not going to have to meet the residential space standards, okay, if you're not turning it into residential. So that's where there's so you might get a lot more short stay units than you would residential units. So that's a little
when you showed the what was it, the studio suite, and you said sleep 6, I'm like, all right, I've got I've got HMOs where the studio will sleep 1, you know, so that's really good to see. Ash is commenting on the register. Interesting thought.
People have got golden tickets.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's awesome. I'm really happy for you guys.
Quickly they'll run out.
Oh yeah. I think last time when I think Stuart did this for the co-living revolution event, we ran out of it in the call. So yeah, if you're on the fence, it's a good time to look at it. Ash is asking, interesting thoughts about using apartment as they say. So this is as a comment to the public register. So when SA units are used, despite the lease not allowing it, the freeholder could use this to enforce it. So that's interesting. Anyways, asking, what about converting pubs with beds into apart hotels?
So pubs, again, it's a different planning class. So you might have accommodate, you know, some pubs have like floors above, so but it depends on what the use is. If it's already been used as short stay, then you might be able to do that. But a pub is a different planning class, so it would need planning permission to convert it. They may not want to lose. It depends. If it's a disused pub that's empty and it's not viable as a pub, then there might be a good argument to, again, you might be more likely to get permission for this type of use rather than residential, depending on the area. But it will be planning. It will be a planning application. Absolutely.
Yeah. Ella is asking again, do units need to have kitchen or kitchenettes? I think this is driven by your market demand.
Driven by the market demand, depending where you are. I mean, as you saw, what I shared before was around the different levels of facility. So some of the smaller units we have, we might just put a snack station in there. So it's like it's a hotel room style unit, but with extra facilities. So you might have within a building, you might have some that just have the snack stations in, but then within the same building, you might have some that have got more facilities, bigger kitchenettes, or even full kitchens. So they don't all necessarily have to have kitchens, but you do need to think about your surrounding area. If you're room only, if you don't have you're not providing breakfast and things, it's like, are there cafes nearby, all of that kind of stuff. So all of that we kind of covered in the market research part of our discovery day, because just the importance of understanding your market, and that might help to dictate how you actually set the property up.
Awesome. John is asking, are business rates always applicable to these Aparthotels, or is there a risk for individual unit banding with council tax if they are self-contained?
No, it'd be business rates. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, be business.
Awesome.
Yeah, like a hotel, we're talking about keeping this as a C1 class, it's a business class, or even if it was a block of residential apartments, if that's how you're operating them, it should be business rates that you're paying.
Awesome. Steven is asking, how do you give and prevent access to rooms, apartment? Do you use like key safe, electronic security, and things like that?
So say that again,
how do you prevent access, because you said it's self-managed, it's no staff on site?
Yeah, so there's no staff on site. So yeah, we have, that's all to do with our systemization. Yeah, so we've got secure digital door locks, it generates unique codes, there's no, you can't have a situation where a guest that had a code can get back in, so that's all to do with the software, the technology that we use. We have CCTV, we've got it's all about what we put in place. Okay, so no, we don't have staff on site, we have loads of safety measures, which means that it's still a very secure building, and we have all our systems in place to mitigate those kind of risks.
Awesome. I think Adam has had a question which was pretty much you answered with this answer. Rita is asking, sorry if I missed it, but do you not have to apply for planning permission to increase the number of residents, regardless of what planning class the building has?
So if you're
it's to do with your case study where you went from 8 to 12 units, and I'm sure you must have doubled the amount of occupiers in globally as well. Potentially.
Yeah, so we're creating more units, but we're not changing the use of the building. We're not changing the use, and so where you need planning permission is required for change of use and for certain size extensions and things like that. Okay, so we're not increasing the size, we're not doing conversions, we're not doing extensions, and we're not changing the use, we're keeping the use the same. So all we're doing is increasing the number of units. All we're doing is reconfiguring the internal layout. The only caveat would be if that specific property had some kind of restriction on title. So if it had, again, you always have to do your due diligence on each individual property. So the only caveat would be if that building had a planning application in the past, and for some reason there was a condition that restricted the number of units it could be, but if it doesn't have any of those restrictions, or if there's no restrictions or covenants on title, no specific previous planning permissions that have specified restrictions, then there's no reason why you cannot reconfigure the layout and increase the number of units. Some saying in capital letters, what about building regs? 100%, you absolutely do this in building regs. We're not suggesting building regs and planning are totally different, and you 100% do it building regs. You obviously would not do that. You would not, any work that you do, you absolutely do building regs. We've got very stringent building regs. We've got very stringent fire safety in there. Everything meets fire safety, building regs, compliance. So that is 100%. You would never ever sidestep that.
Awesome. Eva is asking, have you acquired a listing building for Aparthotels before?
Yes.
How much does it cost to put it in terms of planning application?
Okay, so that's the other caveat for planning. Listed buildings so anyone that's worked with listed buildings, and our second Aparthotel is a listed building. Okay, so we have got experience of that. So the other difference, listed buildings need planning permission for pretty much everything, okay, that you do.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
so we're a normal building that's not a listed building. You reconfigure the layout, all of that. You know, you do that without planning permission. But with a listed building, you need listed building consent, which is a planning
Yeah.
application, and it's planning permission. If you're, you know, just if you were moving a bathroom, and if you're moving anything you do within a listed building needs consent. So that is a planning application. So we did do, our second one was, we did have to do planning permission on that for the new layout, but not for any change of use, because we weren't changing the use. So there was no issues. There was no issues with the use. So there wasn't, so before we bought it, we did approach the heritage, the listed building officer, and it's like, okay, this is the layout that we want to do. And you're just making sure that they're happy with that, because of course, the planning department, you know, it goes into both places. It goes into the planning, it goes into listed buildings. There's no issue on the planning side with the use because we weren't changing the use. We just had to get the new configuration and the new layout approved from a listed building point of view. So I hope that answers. Was that the full question?
Awesome, yeah, thank you. Trevor and actually Alexi DM'd me about this, so wondering if this recording will be available somewhere. So in just a couple of days, this will be along with all the other Deal Find a Corner recordings within Property Filter inside your success base in your resource videos. And yeah, all the recordings are there in your member only area basically.
Okay.
Tim's asking.
Sorry, that just quickly, there's a couple of people saying there's an issue with the dates. Okay, so these dates are correct. Someone says they booked in it but it was come through as the 19th of April, but it's definitely the 28th of April is definitely correct. So rebook this for Sunday, please. Yes, it is Sunday. So there's obviously let me take a note of that. So just to be clear, it looks like when you've gone into that link, it's showing 19th of April is one of the dates, which we had originally put 19th of April, but we changed it to 28th. So it sounds like maybe something hasn't been updated in the system. So it's definitely Sunday the 28th is definitely the right date. So the 19th of April is not, there isn't one on the 19th of April. So do you save the chat box, Gilliam? I'm just wondering if anyone has booked the 19th of April, if that's come through, then that's not the date, it's these 3 dates. So you can just email us and say which date you want, okay? So if something's happened and there's been an accident and you've booked onto the 19th of April, then it's one of these 3 dates that you need to be on. So if that has happened to you, please just email us and confirm which date you want to come on. So sorry about that if that's happened. Okay.
Awesome. Tim's asking about the pub, and I think we answered the question just earlier. Ali's asking, but if you have apartments within your building, wouldn't this require planning permission? I think it's when you have your studios, your self-contained units, and bigger apartments. Would you need planning for this?
So, sorry, say that question again.
So the question is, but apartments will require planning permissions, and I'm guessing this is to do with the way you have your dwelling mix inside your.
Someone is saying that they require that they've been told that they require planning or for an apartment.
I think it's an assumption or comment. So
Okay.
when you described about the studio suites, and then the full apartment inside the same Aparthotel that you reconfigured, wouldn't that require planning permission because there's a full apartment there?
No, it shouldn't do. I mean, you'd obviously have to do building regs and stuff, but it's like if you're not changing use because you're not making it a C3, you're not doing it as a C3 residential apartment. If you wanted to rent it on an AST as a buy-to-let, or if you wanted to sell that off as a residential apartment, then you may well need planning permission. But if it's staying within the use class of the C1 as a short let, if you took the floor, like the basement, for example, and created that more as like a full apartment and put all full facilities in there, but you're still using it as as part of the hotel and the guest accommodation, then the use is part of that C1 use. I know there's again, someone mentioned Blackpool. I know there's some little anomaly, and a couple of people have said in Blackpool, they've required planning permission, and I don't know like exactly under what context that is, or if it's how it's being presented to planning, because you're not presenting it as, you're not presenting it as we're creating completely separate self-contained compartment. We're creating guest units, okay, and that guest unit could be self-contained. We're not splitting all the utilities. We're not creating completely separate apartments. They're part of the use class. They're part of the C1 hotel use. Okay, so always, I say, you always do your due diligence on individual buildings. Always worth consulting with a planning consultant. Okay. But I would say in most cases where you've got this C1 use class, you're not changing the use, you're using that as guest accommodation, then the self-containment aspect that's more about building regs and having the making sure the fire safety and everything, that you're able to put the facilities in from a building regs and fire safety point of view, but from a use class point of view, you're not changing the use. Okay, as I say, caveat is you always look at each individual property and do your due diligence on that.
Awesome. And it's one you would bring to the deal clinics, actually.
You bring it to deal clinic, you obviously, you speak to planning consultants, and then, I mean, there's, sometimes owners accommodation, you go, well, could that be classed as C3 or C1?
Yeah.
Usually that's kind of ancillary, because usually with the owner's accommodation, you're not accessing it you have to go through the hotel to access it. So again, even if there was some kind of certificate of lawfulness needed, it's not going to be contentious, because that could never be a separate residential, unless it's got its own street entrance and stuff like that, and you might want to do that. That might be again, you would look at everything on its own merits. You might, if something maybe you've got more value doing that, but normally it's ancillary, and therefore if it's ancillary to the C1 use, there shouldn't be any issue with that just being part of the C1 use.
I think that's really interesting what you just said, because people believe that there is this magic register of C1 properties or any planning class somewhere, and in reality there is no register. Nobody knows what planning class is on every building, so you just have to demonstrate this at the start of the project.
Yeah, exactly. It's how it's used, and remember, like, these buildings have historically, they probably never got planning permission to become guest houses, but they've maybe been a guest house for 50, 60 years. So what determines a use class is how a property has been used. Yeah. So it's about its established use. Okay, so that is, so often, like you say, so I think someone said, how do you find a use class? I mean, there are, there obviously are reasons, but it's about, and we go into that in a lot of detail in the training.
Sonia is asking, I missed, Eva was asking about the management. So with your multiple locations, you use the same management company. The question was about the company, but I think you've got more of a process than a company managing it.
Yeah. No, we don't use a third party holiday lets company like for this. We have all of our systems set up in-house, but systemized. Okay, so we are not dealing with the day-to-day. We want control of this business. We don't want to hand over to a third party SE like that's not invested, and that's our view. It's like there's certain elements that you want to have visual. We want that database. We don't want a third party company to have our guest database. So what we do is what we've done. No one was teaching this at the time. We had to work this out. Stuart and I had to like systemize this business ourselves and work out, because we did start out, when we very first started out, we did start out with actually SE management company doing it, and it was a disaster. Okay, so we had to, and we thought it was all going to be, we just do the development, we came up with the idea, let's do that, we did it, and we handed it over thinking that was going to be it, and then it was a disaster, and we were like, okay, we've got to do this ourselves. So we were very motivated, because we didn't want to do the day-to-day, so we systemized that whole business, and we've got that blueprint now. So where we've kind of did it the hard way, we're now teaching people and giving them all of the elements so they can do it the easy way. But you've got a business that you've systemized, but you're not handing over control of.
That's what you said about product, yeah, you're designing a product and you don't want to spoil it with a poor service.
Yeah,
So the service is really part of the product, and it's certainly the approach we have at PropTfilter. There is the product, the platform, there's all the service, the live chat, you can access every day, 15 hours of live calls. There is these sessions, the Wednesday sessions I run. So it's all the old service around the product is part of the product. So I can see having the wrong thing around would spoil the old design
yeah,
element and all the old development and the old project. Yeah. Ripa is asking, so which filter do we use to find C1 properties on property filter? So it's a really good question. So uh, as we alluded a bit earlier, there is actually no register of C1 properties. The council don't know which properties are C1 in their book of addresses. So it's all about finding the use. And the way we find the use on property filter is you go and create a lead generator for either commercial and residential. And I would recommend duplicate both, because those properties will be listed sometime on residential portal, sometime on commercial. And then you put, you go as wide as possible in terms of the filters. Don't put any filter on price or anything like that. And then in the keywords, you just stick to include guest houses, B&Bs, and hotels, and it will pick up all the ones that are here in your area. This works really well, and it's what Carly alluded to at the start, the way they implement this search as part of the training and the courses.
absolutely. And we show, and again, the property filter didn't exist when we were doing it, so we had to do it the hard manual way. So you've definitely got a head start with being with having access to property filter. So we absolutely show you the hard and manual way to do it, and then you can use the property filter to definitely identify more easily the buildings.
Yeah, we've got some good feedback from Stuart on that. So yeah, you guys are doing quite well with this, and it's one of these things where we have conversations. We had conversation with you guys and say, oh, could you add this? And it's what we do. So we try to think we are building a community of people finding deals rather than building a software, and then the community informs what needs to be built in the software. And that's a very good example.
Yeah, and that's been brilliant. So that's been a great sort of interaction, and I know that you and Stuart have kind of worked on that closely together, which is great, because you get a business like yours that actually responds to the needs of the users, which is just amazing. And then you can go, oh great, I can just ask for this and it happens. And it's brilliant.
And this is how you benefit from the bounce. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
The change in the market. Yeah.
Everything has to be looked at as an opportunity. I mean, there's been, for years and years, there's always challenges that face the property market, that face any market, and it's just how you respond to it is whether you succeed or not. And it's you whenever there's a challenge, you look for the opportunity, and you and you operate in line with your values and build businesses you believe in, and that's the approach that I would always encourage people to take.
Awesome. So lots of people seem to have the golden ticket, which is great. Alex is asking, looking to convert a large property into C1 for potential Aparthotels, how long would you normally need to allow for planning for this change of use, please?
From what type of building?
Not sure. Not sure. A large property into C1, so I would assume a residential C1, a C3 property into C1, I would assume.
Well, yes, yeah. So you would probably need planning permission. You've got, depending on location, you've got to assess every kind of opportunity. Again, the C1s are already there, so that's where there's a great opportunity, because rather than taking a big residential property and converting it, why not look for a C1 and do that without planning permission? But but having said that, yeah, you would need planning permission. So it just depends on the location, whether that makes sense. Okay, whether it depends on what the value of residential property is. Okay, you don't want to devalue a building, because the business, it's all got to make sense. We still need to have our investor hats on, our developer investor hats on. It's not always going to be the best thing to move away from C3. Sometimes C3 is where the value is, okay, in terms of the asset of the building. And sometimes turning C1 into C3 might be the way that you want to go. But there's locations where, so there's going to be locations where they don't want to lose C3. So if they don't want to lose C3, then you're probably not going to get planning permission. And then there's locations where they don't want to lose C1. So there's lots of C1 buildings that you will never get planning permission to turn into C3. You'll never get planning permission to turn it into residential. So then we look at, okay, this is the kind of building that we want to work with because it's in a tourist, or it's in a location. It might not be tourist, it might be contractors you're working with, but it's in a location where there is the demand for that. And we want to maximize and utilize that building and turn it into a much better model. And what is adapting to the way that people travel now. The way that guests travel is completely different. Their demands, what they're looking for. They're not looking for the traditional guest houses anymore. They want convenience, you know, they want great design. They want COVID's accelerated that massively as well.
Awesome. Carly, thank you so much. There's quite a few other
You're
questions,
welcome.
but I'm running out of battery on my thing, so I'm scared we would be cut off in a moment. So do you have like a closing sentiment, a closing thought around what we talked about today?
Yeah, and I would just say, I mean, I just firstly thank you for your time. I know we've gone over, and so like, you know, thanks for sticking with us and listening. I hope you found the content useful and interesting. If it's something, you know, if it's a something that you either want to pursue or you're interested in learning more about, do come on the discovery day. You know, you'll get a good insight into whether or not this is the right business model for you. It might not be what you want to do, but it's certainly coming on the discovery day is going to give you good insight. And then of course, if it's definitely something you want to pursue, you know, you can join us on our 6-month mastermind. We've had lots of success with our students there, and a really nice bunch of people. But I'm looking forward to it. I know lots of you have already applied, lots of you have won the golden ticket, which is amazing. So those of you that have that are joining us, really look forward to seeing you, and thanks very much for your time.
Yeah, thanks so much. And Alexi, on your question about this one deal, what a perfect one to bring this Sunday on the deal clinic. So yeah, you do take on this.
Yeah, do. Yeah, so some of
really
you
cool
come this
offer.
Sunday, send in your floor plans, absolutely, and we'll choose a few. We get quite a lot in, so we'll select the ones that we think are going to help the most people, and give the feedback.
Carly, thank you so much. All
Thanks,
of you,
Graham. Lovely to see
Yeah.
you. Thank you for having
No,
me,
thank you.
and thanks everyone.
Yeah, thanks so much. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for joining us on today's Deal Finder Corner. So do visit and take on this offer, and you might, you know, I don't know if there will be any left golden tickets, but anyway, 150 pound discount is always good to get. In the meantime, visit propertyfilter.co.uk, log on to your property filter account, check on the deal blueprint where you can define your gold mine area, engage with motivated sellers, assess properties in seconds, load your pipeline and make deals, have an endless supply of deals. Join the top 1% and become a high achiever deal finder. I hope you enjoyed today's Deal Finder Corner. I look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you so much. And thank you, Carly.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much. Thank you for sticking with us. Bye-bye.